Y'all ready to ride?
Hello.
Robble, robble. Let's go.
All right.
So I'm really excited because Zach and I haven't gotten to work together yet, and he gave me a really nice opportunity, which I want to thank him for publicly, to speak with him about the joys of managing a live-in renovation.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to kind of take a step back because you really prepared this presentation. So I'm going to add color, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
And texture. Yeah, so
Flavor as well.
I would say the real title should be How to Do a Live-In Remodel If You Have to. This is a plan B or C at best. Try and get the homeowner to move out
So
if possible. But where I really run into trouble is when the homeowner has dogs, when they have schools and school drop-offs, and some of my clients even end up buying separate houses because they can't find a rental in our area. We're just outside of Manhattan. There's not a lot of property. There's if you're a couple miles away, they can ruin your commute. So
Yep.
every time I say never again, and then every year I do at least one.
That's right. We have a similar story. I was just talking to Wade Paquin in the back about, he's like, you still do that? And I was like, yes, we still do it. We always advise clients exactly as you do. You will be happier, your family and your pets will be healthier and likely survive. I've heard of pet body counts as a result of the stress of the tool noise and the dust, and we'll get into all
Really?
that stuff. But if at all possible, if your client can afford it, it's much easier on everyone. The construction schedule goes faster. Everything is easier if the client can manage that. But sometimes you just got to do it. So how do we do it?
How do we do it? All right. Well, I think the first thing is let's step back a little bit and talk about how we can try and show them it's a good idea to move out. And the first thing might be saying it's not a matter of paying rent versus not paying rent. If you pay rent and you move out, then we can disconnect utilities. We don't have to leave the job as tidy. We don't have to communicate with you so much because sometimes you'll be having to communicate a lot more with the homeowner saying, the drywall installer is going to be there at 10. And then he shows up at 2, and they're saying, I thought the drywall carpet was coming today. And you're saying, well, today at some point.
Yeah.
This isn't a perfect system. So you have to charge for your management time to have a more high-touch experience, and you have to charge them for the additional cleanup and for your, we do old houses, so a lot of times we're going to de-energize a lot of the house, that we may be disconnecting plumbing, and you need to set their expectations that we're going to charge you more because if we're cutting plumbing, we have to reconnect it at the end of the day. If we're cutting electric, we have to reconnect it. So that's going to be a bigger dollar amount for the sub-trades.
Numerous duplicated costs and efforts, a lot of redundant costs that basically are construction waste in terms of wasted dollars and time.
Yeah, I don't know if this is common for you, but I have a lot of, where we've found the sweet spot is we'll do a live-in remodel towards the end, so usually the client doesn't mind moving out to a summer home or getting out when the kids are out of school, but come September, they want to be back in that house.
They better be ready.
So it's like a partial live-in remodel where we've got the floors down, we've got the drywall sanded, we've got primer on, and then they're coming back in, and that's sort of how we at least sort of buy ourselves a little time.
Yeah, we've done that a couple times. It's nice when the clients can afford it. We're like, that European vacation that you can't afford because you're redoing the house, now's the best time to take it. Just be gone for as long as possible.
Correct. So I think the first thing to think about is there's certain jobs it works on and there's certain jobs it doesn't. In general, our homeowners have misconceptions about how long it's going to take, right? They think it's going to be a shorter duration than it actually is. So they don't mind being inconvenienced for 2 months, but in reality, this is a 6-month job.
Setting those expectations is so key. And I'm sure everybody has their own strategy. I used to always say, well, I figure out how long it's going to take and then I double it and then I tell them double that. Because I'm very optimistic. The projects always have changes, especially when the clients live in and when they see it every day and they walk through, they always go, ooh, I thought this would be like this. Can we change that? And now you're not just expanding their cost of scope, but you're actually expanding that duration substantially. So
it's very true. So one of the things that we sort of learned from working through the pandemic, the COVID epidemic, was whenever someone was exposed, we had to then, sort of tell the homeowner who was exposed, and it was a lot of work. So we made a rule that complete separation. So we'll do a live-in remodel if there's a separate entrance, meaning they have one way of getting into the house, we have one way of getting in the house. Maybe they're living in the basement and they have a separate entrance, but we try to have zero crossover for a couple reasons. One is they need to be comfortable, and their privacy we want to respect. We don't want them, waking up at 6 a.m. and feeling like they have to be hospitable to our team. They're paying us. It's not their job to entertain us as contractors, right? So little things you can do for their privacy is like using black poly instead of clear poly. So
Yes.
even if they're right on the other side of a dust wall, they don't have to sort of like, hey, you know.
Clutching the robe and running through,
Yeah.
morning, Zach.
So we try and do total separation, mostly for dust, obviously, but also for privacy. And if we can't definitively break up the space, then we're going to tell them like this isn't a good fit. And the only real exception to that is a bathroom remodel, where it doesn't make sense for them to move out, but you do have to like plow through this public area to get into the house.
Yeah, you're not going to build an addition onto the back side of the house so you can cut in a door where the window is and get access. That's just not reasonable. But in every case that you can separate that access point and limit your interactions, things will move faster and cleaner and everyone will be happier.
So we try and communicate, if we're doing a bathroom remodel, what's public, what's private, and what's construction space. And we'll actually take the plans and mark it up and give the homeowner a proposal, because they assume that just because we're working in the bathroom, they can leave all of their belongings in the closet and they can kind of go in and out. And the first thing you do is you tape that door shut, and then 2 weeks into it, they realize there's something in there. They rip the closet plastic off, don't tape it off properly. You fill that dust with
dust,
that
yeah.
closet with dust, and then you've got an unsatisfied customer who's like, I didn't think there'd be this much dust.
They never think it's going to be that much, and it always is more. And the other aspect of this that I really like, Zach, and I hadn't seen this before, this is brilliant, by the way. I love that you've defined everything clearly on the plan, and you've set those expectations with your client, but you've also notified them like, hey, I'm touching this wall. We have had clients many times be like, great, we're living on the other side. I'm like, right, but everything on that wall has to come off because I'm going to be hitting the wall with a hammer to break up the tile, so that really expensive picture that you love is going to be on the floor in shards of glass unless you do what I say and take it away.
Yeah, we made this after I purchased a replacement mirror that was several $100s that the demo crew knocked off by smashing
That's
it.
how we learn. Now you guys don't have to do the broken mirror. You can just learn from Zach's mistake.
So this is a good exemplification of sort of separate access. So you can see we're accessing through the back of this project, and the homeowner gets the front of the project. And the reason we want to define this is we want the homeowner to know that we need a staging area. Like if you have a bathroom renovation, for example, and you can take over a bedroom to store your materials, it's going to be cheaper than if you have to load out all your tools at the end of the day and load in, and you have nowhere to store materials. So we impress upon them, you don't have to move out of this room, but we're going to charge you more for this extra labor. And usually when money's involved, people start to be more compliant.
They definitely get motivated very quickly when you say, how many hours a day do you want to pay me just to move my tools around?
Exactly.
None? Can you just make that part of it? Okay, well then give me the space.
So the dollars and cents can be a big motivator. But yeah, I think really setting expectations is the key.
Absolutely.
And especially with people working from home, telling them that they're always like, oh, we don't mind, we're easygoing, we're fine if the internet goes out, until the internet goes out, and they're like, I've got a Zoom meeting in 20 minutes.
Right.
And you have to have those conversations up front about what's your contingency plan? Can you work off your phone? The power's going to go off, the water's going to go off, the sewer's going to go off, and just get it in writing, get it in emails so that they feel managed.
We navigate this a little less formally and do so on a couple days notice, like, hey, we're getting close to where we can, shut off the water and make our connection. We're going to be out of water on Thursday. So plan for that. Don't be home for that. You won't have a restroom facility. You're not cooking lunch at home. And the same thing with Wi-Fi. Hey, we're going to be running the demo hammer and pulling up tile all day. So there will be no auditory piece for a quarter mile. Be elsewhere. And usually we can work through those pretty quickly.
Right, so the biggest complaint I think most people have with live-in remodels is,
Dust.
I didn't know there's going to be this much dust. There's so much dust.
Endless.
And sort of how I came to this is we were doing a remodel, it was isolated in the house, and we put a dust door up and taped it and did everything, and it was an old, drafty house. And what happens in drafty houses, you have the stack effect, right?
Yep.
So we're working on the first floor in this isolated area, making a ton of dust, and we leave. We're just accessing it through that one door, and the homeowner calls me and said, the whole house is full of dust. The whole house, top to bottom. And I went in, and sure enough, there was just this thick film of dust throughout the whole house, because the house was just sucking in cold air through the basement, sending it up, and it was right to the attic. Everything was covered in a film of dust.
I think we all have stories like that. It's usually for us, it's during the drywall sanding phase where somebody was like, oh, I needed to open the window. It was so hot in here, I was dying. And you're like, right, but you you've changed the pressurization, and now we have this giant force blowing into and challenging our dust control. Everybody has a story about spending a half a day cleaning up for 2 seconds of paying attention.
Right, so that sort of brings us into how do we control dust, right?
Perfect segue. We've been practicing this all week.
Yeah, we've done this 6 or 7 times now.
This is the best one, though.
Yeah.
You guys picked the right one to
Yeah,
come
you
to.
definitely, we were not messing with the slideshow 5 minutes
Not at
ago.
all.
Not at all. So this is my biggest friend and confidant here. It's an air scrubber. There's different varieties, but the concept here is we've decided to control air movement through the house. And specifically why we want to do this is because you can have situations that are out of your control, like the stack effect, or you're never going to detail a room with masking tape and plastic to a way where it's going to be completely airtight. There's too many circumstances that are out of control. So we have 5 of these, and we basically try and just surpass whatever the possible amount of alternative load there's going to be, right?
Yeah, your attention to detail on this is impressive. We only have 2 of these units, and we kind of approach it as not just for maintaining the pressure that we want to keep things coming into our space. So basically, when I keep talking about depressurization because I'm a huge dork, and the building science is irresistible. So if we're going to take air into a fan and blow it out across a filter to collect that dust, which is what is effectively scrubbing the air, we want to blow that air out of the house, so that we've created a negative pressure. So instead of redistributing all the dust that Zach's talking about through stack effect or other distribution methods, we have now taken and made our space negative pressure. It's sucking the rest of the house in, and then we're blowing it out so that that condition always exists. Even when you open your zip door or whatever door you use to go in and out with your crew, we don't risk distributing that dust, and then we can clean and change the filters. This is a brilliant system that renovation contractors have known about for a long time. Everyone should have one of these, or 5, I guess.
Right, so if you've never used one of these, have any of you never used or seen this before? You all have seen it, all right. So basically how it works, you got a fan, it's blowing out here, it's sucking in here. You want to put cheap, inexpensive filters in the front because the one that's sort of inboard is at least $76.
Pricey HEPA.
And as that clogs, it's going to be less effective. Typically these move about 500 CFM. If you get sort of the best unit that looks like this, there's several different. They all look a little different, but if you spend $1,000, you're moving about 500 CFM. If you get one like this, it probably says it's 500, but it's not actually 500. Right. So it's worth spending a little bit more on them, but how we typically set this up is how you see on that. So we're going to make a dust wall, and you'll see more slides like that, but basically this is going to be your finished space that you're trying to protect. This is going to be your construction side, and basically we're just going to cut a hole, and you'll see there's a rib on this, so you'll run your knife around the inside, stretch the plastic over, and you've done a couple things, right? So actually I said that wrong. This is construction, this is finished space. So what you're looking at there is the finished side of the job. And it's doing 2 things, right? It's negatively pressurizing this side, but it's also positively pressurizing this side. So air on the finished side wants to push in, and air from this side wants to pull out. So if if a dog walks under your dust wall and you've got a big gaping hole, it doesn't create any sort of drafts because you're overwhelming that little hole. And that's why we just, as the remodel gets bigger and bigger and we're trying to protect more space, we're just adding in more of these scrubbers.
It's a really brilliant system. The thing that I always remind the client is that we also are people. Like our crews, I know that we're talking about we got to protect the client's assets. They're our client, we're there to serve them, but we also care about our crew members. And this is pulling the dust out of the air and putting it on a filter instead of in my mask or in my lungs. So this has value beyond just caring for your client's stuff and keeping you from wiping down their surfaces and spending a day with vacuum.
Right. And one mistake I see contractors use when they purchase these is you've got a room, the first thing they'll do is they'll pop this in the center of the room, turn it on, and that's job done. And really, it's not an effective way of using this because you're pulling air here and you're blowing out the air there, and there's dust all over the room, right? So you're just sending air and dust and mixing it up, and you're not really controlling the movement. So there's a couple ways you can control it. You can do what I've shown there by putting it on the clean side, and then it's sort of making its way back in through the crevices. Or if you don't have that opportunity, you can just connect some ductwork, right, to the end, and then throw this out a window, or if you're working in a vaulted area, you don't want this thing on the floor, you could suspend it from the ceiling, but there's multiple ways you can control this, but you don't want to just drop it in because you're not effectively taking clean air and moving it one way or the other.
It's not the best way to install it. I have actually, on a lot of our projects, left our scrubbers running overnight, the giant Husky 55-gallon trash, because we use the old, the build clean units, the round ones that are impossible to store efficiently. That's why I like this so much, when envious of Zack's system. The round things are hard to store, but they do fit really nicely on the top of an upturned trash can. And you could leave those on with a timer to constantly be pulling into that filter and capturing that dust. And then that blowing out the side isn't blowing all the dust off the floor up and around, but that's an end of the day, after everything's cleaned up use. His point is exactly right about the best way to use this.
Right, and one of the issues we have is educating trade partners about using this, because you can have a job that's been clean for days and you're controlling dust, you're doing a great job, and one drywall contractor comes in and sands one spot and undoes all your work. So what we try to do is tie the lights to this circuit. So if you come into our job and you want lights, you have to turn on the scrubbers, and it all comes on together. And we also have labeled in Portuguese, Spanish, and Polish, leave these things on, don't turn them off, because people tend to be in the habit of, at the end of the day,
shut it down,
turn everything off, and ours are typically tied into a standard timer, basically. Yep. So they come on at 8, they go off at 5. We switched to using like smart switches recently, and then we noticed they'd stop working when the Wi-Fi went out. So we were having issues with dust getting into the house. So I think like a cheap, just standard.
The vacation lamp timer might be the perfect thing. Like, let's convince the neighbors we're not gone. That stupid little plastic clock is what you need.
That has never let us down. And the only complaints we'll get is if it's a down day, the homeowners are like, hey, there's no one working here. Can I turn that thing off? And we're like, you can turn it off, but make sure you turn it on tomorrow if no one's there.
They do have a noise issue, and so if you really are dealing with the single poly wall between you and the client's living room and they want to watch the movie, I get that. That's reasonable, but we definitely want to remind them, yeah, it's only working when it's running. It's like your air conditioner. You've got a really nice system, but you're not going to be any cooler if you don't turn the damn thing on.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point about protecting our lungs as trade people. You know, we work in 130-year-old houses. There's lead, there's asbestos. We try and subcontract that work out to abatement companies, but do we really know 100% of it's gone? You know, there's always some additional debris that's there, and let's just capture as much of it as possible.
Yeah. And there might be scope creep. I don't know if you've ever had a client
ask
you to do something additional that you weren't planning on or had agreed to do, but you might end up disturbing something that wasn't necessarily part of that original contract.
Right, so we may come back to this, but let's talk about dust doors.
Let's do it.
Couple different ways. You know, if you have for some reason, a connection between the two, right, that door's got to be good, and it's got to be something that you can sort of come through with material, not break. So there are ones you can purchase online that are great, but one that's kind of common and cheap for us is we'll put some drop cloths up like you see in that photo and just hang them. And the great thing about the air scrubbers is you don't need an airtight door. It just has to be good enough.
Yeah, that's a really, especially for like a quick demo, I'm going to pull the drywall in here, something fast that's not going to be drywall sanding, that's going to hang in the air for a long time. That's a perfect solution. It's super fast. If we're pulling trims on a window for a window swap, we always do that on the bedrooms. It's perfect for a very low cost and easy to maintain, in and out with tools, every 5 minutes, doesn't care.
Yeah, a couple other things about these photos is, like, anytime you get packaging that you can save and use as future protection, it's free protection, cardboard, corner protection, and we use a lot of these sticky mats when we get into the finish point, just to sort of, you can easily get a client who decides to walk into the job at night, and then you come in, and then all of their finished surfaces have these drywall footprints everywhere, and they're sort of like, why wasn't the job cleaned up? And so we find the sticky mats, at least when they stick to it when they walk in, it's a positive reminder of, maybe swap your footwear.
And those things are super cheap. I think, we bought what I thought would be a 1-year supply about 9 years ago, and we're still getting through them because they do last a little longer than you would think. Yeah. And then, of course, some guys forget to peel them. So, anyway, the idea of having that right there at the surface as the last surface as you enter or leave the job is a really good reminder for client behavior, but also your tradespeople. Because for the longest time, we would just tell everyone, hey guys, shoes off from here to there. Shoes off from here to there. And about the third time that they come out and they're like, look man, I just forgot my coffee. I'm trying to get my job done, but I'm sick of going in and out. Pretty soon they're just walking across the floor. Yeah. So having those is a great solution.
So this photo here is a bathroom remodel we did, and basically we're trying to protect the walls. There's that tight turn, so we're protecting surfaces. And how we sell this to the client is one of the first things at the top of the proposal is protecting surfaces, and we're charging by foot. This product you see there is at least, it's like $100 a roll, and a roll's 100 feet. It's expensive, so you want to charge the client for that. And I've never had a client push back on it. If they have a problem with, $1,500 in protection for a product, you can just say, that's not a problem, just sign here that any damage that happens at all during this renovation, you're covering, or it's on a hourly basis to fix. And typically they're like, all right, no, it's no problem.
I think that'd be a good investment after all, Zach. Thanks for that. We appreciate you thinking of our project.
Yeah, the other thing to think about is temp power. We work in old houses, so typically there's no 20 amp lines, so it's not uncommon for us to have the electrician come in first and do either a temp power box or run a couple of 20 amp lines to wherever we need them, because we're running scrubbers, we're running vacuums, compressors, and if the house can't support it and you're constantly tripping breakers and tracking dust through the house, it's not great. So it's a good idea to include that, and I've really never had any pushback on the cost once it's explained to the homeowner.
Yeah, we don't have, because one of the benefits of being licensed in the trades, we self-perform a lot of that stuff under our own work. And so what we'll usually tell them is, we're going to be disconnecting a number of circuits, but we're going to retain the use of several, and they will be dedicated to our use. So you'll find them marked in the panel, do not turn off. And usually that's very attainable for us. I don't think we've had to run too many temps just for our purposes, but that's really a cool idea.
I like it. So one thing I learned from Travis was this dust door approach using foam. He's got a video on it on the Build Network if you ever heard of it.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite doors because of the geometry of it, but we use it on normal doorways that don't involve a stairway as well. And the reason that we settled on this is because we were using zip wall, thin painter's plastic, like, well, just basic dust protection, it's not that big a deal. And the clients would do the door the first time and they would get it, and then the second time they would do it, they would rip the door out of the plastic, and then when you come in the morning, there's dust everywhere, and they would never call you and say, hey, I damaged the door. And then we went to a heavier plastic, and they'd pull the tape off of it. It was just one of those things that clients don't want to have to operate things that they're unfamiliar with. And that's the beauty of just a sheet of rigid foam, is it looks like a door and it operates like a door, and it's super low cost. And with basically I just made a tape hinge. So imagine you're doing sheeting, you would just cover the whole surface of the wall and nail it off. That's what I've done here, except no fasteners. I taped it to the finished surfaces that I don't want to damage. That allowed me to protect the railing that's behind there as well. And then by using a wide piece of Gorilla Tape, I was able to create a very simple operating hinge, fold it open, tape the inside too, close it back up, and then there's handles at the top and bottom in case they get it out of shape, because there isn't any real magic to that other than a piece of double folded tape against itself on the backside to make that a gasket. So this is my favorite dust door for a live-in renovation where the client has to go through it. There's an argument to be made that if you don't want your clients to come through the doorway, make it a door that they can't operate easily. That might not be the best choice, but for a job where the client's going to be in there every night, they're going to come and see you during the job and say, I want to make this change, having it be a familiar operation that still gives you a really good dust control and some surface protection. I mean, I think that's an hour and a half of work and $60 in material. Hard to beat that.
Yeah, and you make a good point too, because I was on a date with my wife once, and I got a text from a client, and it was, Brian fell through the ceiling. This is a change order, I assume, and there's just a hole in the ceiling. And basically what happened was he had a couple drinks, and we had covered the door for this bathroom remodel and blocked it off. But he thought his cat went in there, walked out into the open floor, and fell right through the drywall.
Oh my gosh.
And thankfully it was big enough that he kind of got stuck halfway through. But they'll
dangly
get
legs?
They'll get in,
Oh, that's great.
All right, so I think I covered most of this with negative pressure. Oh yeah, so about these scrubbers, a lot of companies, like restoration companies, like ServPro, those big outfits, they use these scrubbers for mold remediation, and you can buy them used. So that's how I buy most of mine, is on eBay. They're like $400 or $500.
Yep.
And it's not a tool that you want to show up like, look at my shiny new scrubber. It's a utilitarian tool. Just buy them used, and they're great.
Yeah, I think we got our other shaped one. We bought the Build Clean new, but they're out of business now, so don't try to buy one of them. You can probably buy one used, but they're round and they're hard to store. The square one that we got, I think we got used at the Home Depot, because it's about the number of hours of use. It's just like buying heavy equipment. You got a lot of hours on this, I got to get rid of it. Okay, well, I'll take advantage of that.
Yeah. So I think segueing a bit, talking about safety.
We have a question?
Oh, so basically we're going to sort of have we'll sort of amortize the cost of the equipment over a couple years, and then have sort of a generic rental fee that we're billing monthly. And then I have a rough sense of how long a filter is going to last, so I'll typically charge a fee for that. So if we just finished a remodel that was partially live-in towards the end, but we had to protect certain areas, so I charged them something like $50 a month for each unit, and then probably four HEPA filters at $100 each, and then a couple cases of pre-filters, and then probably 2 hours labor per unit for setting up and changing filters and cleaning them after the job is over. And if you go to a rental center and show them what it costs, they're hundreds of dollars per week, and you're guaranteed to have to purchase a new filter. So there's no savings to be had there. So it's typically an easy value argument to make.
Didn't mean to derail you there. We'll probably do most of the questions at the end, but I was like, ooh, that's a good question. Let's get that.
Yeah.
Please continue.
So yeah, I just want to talk about safety quickly. I think it's easy to bully a client into moving out if you can, by addressing safety concerns. If you're picking the house up, or you're modifying it, or you don't have proper egress, you want to, the house is designed to have multiple exits, and if you're blocking them off in a way where it's unsafe, at least educating the client about that, because if there is some sort of catastrophe, you at least want to have documented a conversation of, this is the procedures we had in place, these are the exit strategies, here's what we did, because it can be bad. And on the positive side, if the homeowner's happy, the job's going well, right? So we've gone as far as doing temporary kitchen, temporary washers. We've done temporary hoods, dishwashers, and basically we'll take a sheet of Advantech like this, we'll put a 2x4 around it, and we'll roll Red Guard waterproofing membrane in it, and we'll put a sink, a dishwasher, a washer, and a dryer all next to each other inside that, and then we'll just plumb a drain into the basement if it's typically unfinished, in case there's any water, and then we'll give them a full-on kitchen for large renovations. And they're happy, they have less of that urgency, when you're going to be done, because they're, you're putting yourself in their shoes, and you're giving them a better quality of life. They're not eating Chipotle every night. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's sort of.
I think you've got the superior system. We've used a lot of laundry sinks, the crummy disposable sink and faucet, so that they can at least wash their dishes, and done, a series of Rubbermaid stacks of the things that they were storing anyway. The George Foreman grill is a popular item in our renovations. There's a lot of grilling out in Kansas City. It's barbecue country, so that's been our approach. But that's a really good tip.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think what else we're missing here. Protecting finishes.
So I think that we could spend quite a bit more time on protecting finishes, because there's a lot of different strategies to it. Again, I would reinforce what Zach said early on about, as you start to develop the tasks that your crew will be doing to protect the existing finishes during the work, and you're ticking those moments and hours and hundreds of feet of tapes and products off, you've got to prepare that into your quote in the same way that you just discussed, charging for the air scrubber. These are things that early in my career were always just like, oh, I'll have to do that, but I never defined it, and I didn't spend enough time educating my clients on, this is what we will be doing. You will see 2 to 3 days of us just laying out maybe ram board or whatever. At the time we used a lot of just masonite, and we're going to be taping the seams, and we're going to have to vacuum and clean the floors before we can tape anything down, and it's going to, all that stuff. Educating your client about what you're doing and how long it's going to take shows that you care about their project, but it also allows you to actually bill it and then you can be a successful business. I think we succeeded in spite of ourselves by just including all these things and talking about it a little bit, like, oh, we really don't want to ruin your 120-year-old balustrade. Where's Brent Hull? Slap my hand for that. Spindles and railings. You want to make sure that newel that has been there since the house was built and is the reason that they bought the house because they love that entry. You don't want to be the one to break that thing, man. So if you build in that value of, I'm going to wrap it with carpet pad, then we're going to put 2x around it. On the four corners, it's going to be strapped, and then we're going to also tell the people that that's what you're doing if that's what you want to do. If you want to buy the big cardboard products that wrap around, or I think there's some moving blankets that have a piece of aluminum strap in it. Do you know what those are called?
I don't. I've never seen that before.
Jake uses them a lot. I think you can get them from Protective Products or what's that? U-Line catalog. Everything's in the U-Line catalog. But you can basically buy a moving blanket that has a series of short sections of maybe 1-inch aluminum strap in it. And they're 8 to, it's probably like 20 inches. You can articulate that aluminum and bend it tightly around a cased opening and protect those walls and corners. But all of those products have a price, and your time is valuable, just as your client's finishes are valuable. So build that value into what you're offering, and you're basically creating another revenue stream.
That's true. So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. So there's basically there's a product, some people know it as G-tape, but it's a green edge tape. I believe it's marketed under the RAM board, and it has a 90-day removal rating. So you can put it right on hardwood, and it's a great product, and it leaves no residue. So that's sort of the secret sauce for getting things stuck down to floors. We sort of shy away from it on a new floor because we don't know if the cure time is there. So we'll typically try and put our RAM board upside down so it's curling downwards, or we use a sort of a self-adhered foam flooring protection, which is sort of sticky and will lie flat. And sometimes it'll leave a little residue, but it just wipes up with a mop. Other tapes we use are obviously seam tape. You don't want to cheap out on RAM board seam tape and use masking tape because it just doesn't bond well, and then you end up getting dust that's going in between, and then you have little crunchies between your finished floor that you were trying to protect. Yeah. So don't cheap out on that. There's also for plastic dust doors, this is like a frog tape, so it's sort of just a standard masking tape that's usually you can, it's sort of like for fragile surfaces type, but this is double-sided, so I could just go like this on the wall and then stick my plastic to it, and that would be how I would seal off doors. But we use probably a combination of this, the G-tape, and the seam tape the most. We'll use that edge tape, the green one, for door sills, and we'll just basically tape the top of it. We'll use it on bathtubs for the perimeter. Yeah. When you're, it's not necessarily a live-in remodel, but anytime you have a bathtub and you're trying to protect the deck of it, we love using that tape for it. Let me think, what other products are we?
I don't use a ton of tapes in that application. I will do the G-tape. The blue G-tape is awesome for that. And yep. As soon as we've got the porcelain protected on that tub deck, we will typically use a half-inch sheet of foam and then a half-inch sheet of plywood on top. Yeah. Because we know that at some point the electrician is going to go to work on the fan above it, and he's going to ignore that it's all protected, put the ladder in it, this side's higher, the feet are going to scratch through a tape. So if you're thinking about heavy load, you're always going to be thinking rigid. Like it can never just be taped off. RAM board, pretty durable. If you've got a hard surface under it, you're probably not going to do any damage with a ladder, or even, I don't know, do you do a lot of beams? Like we're rolling in beam lifts, and I'm always like, yeah, I really don't think we can trust anything here. So what we're going to do is put down OSB strips, and we're only going to roll on that, and we're always going to sweep everything before we do it, because it really is about impressing something into that hardwood floor finish. It's really catastrophic.
One mistake I made early in my career was I bought a brand new appliance mover, and so it had this sort of peaked wheels with the mold seam, so it had this sort of pointy line in the middle, and I was working in a cabin on like wide plank pine floors, and wheeled all the appliances in, wrapped up the job, pulled up the flooring protection, and you could see my whole path everywhere I went through that job with the appliances.
Dude, that's heartbreaking.
And I was so lucky the client had terrible vision.
That's the secret. That's the most important thing, is to cause severe eye damage to your client early on.
One thing I neglected to mention that you have to train your trade partners on is demolition crews. A lot of trade partners, the first thing they do in a dusty environment is open the windows. And when you have an open window and you've got wind, it doesn't really matter how many air scrubbers you have. There's going to be pressure pushing from the outside into the dusty side and overwhelming your dust protection. So the first thing we do when we get on the job, and is in every language that people speak that are going to be on that job, we're labeling every window, do not open this window. And that's on both sides. We're doing it on the client side too, because you can have the opposite effect. The other thing is putting filters over any ductwork, because you may have an out of balance house where you're forcing air on the supply side, but your return is on the finish side, and basically it's pumping more CFM than the scrubbers can keep up with. So you have to make sure you're allowing for that balance, or you're just stacking up more and more air scrubbers to keep that system. And then it's almost worse if you have the return in the finish space, because then you're constantly swapping out filters to try and protect the system, and we almost always end up having to bring in a duct cleaning service and having the coils cleaned at the end of the job, because we're just physically not able to stay up with the filter changes and keep everything running properly. And the client should understand that if they want to live in the house, they need it to be heated and conditioned. And if we, in the winter, if we just put a box fan that was super big and is blowing outside, we'll probably end up damaging their heating system, because we're blowing 2,000 CFM out the window and the house equipment can't keep up with it. So that's why scrubbers are our choice instead of a fan that's just blowing out outside.
It's so important, Zach. I can't tell you. We've learned some really hard lessons early in our career. One of the things that I learned was that if you really can trust everyone, everything goes perfectly. And that's just not the reality of it. If we're going to have trade partners on the job when we're not always present, they are going to do what is best for them, not as what is best for the job, every once in a while, even if they're great tradespeople. So what we like to do, and maybe this is because of the HVAC license, I kind of like to build bin metal. I like folding geometry. It's a lot of fun. We would remove registers, and I would basically create an end cap that I would screw into that, and then put a piece of subfloor in it so that it's smooth. And there's no way, because they'll pull it out. You're guaranteed, if you've got guys that are working in a hot environment and they're sweating like crazy,
that's true.
and they're just dying, sand and drywall just dripping. Oh, I can't open the window? That's fine. I'm going to get some AC in here. Well, we had a guy that pulled the return off. It was a return. It was a floor return. So he's trying to get that AC in. He's opened up the return. Well, now all the dust has gone in and packed that coil. We had a very expensive lesson to learn there, and he didn't make very much money on his drywall job. So it was a really bad thing for everyone involved, including the client. You will have very short-tempered clients if you don't keep them comfortable and you mess up their stuff. And that's kind of what most of this is about. But that's a really great solution for making it, I don't want to say idiot-proof, because none of us are idiots and neither are our trade partners. But definitely keeping someone from making a careless error is good. Keeping someone from having the opportunity to make an intentional error is even better.
Right. So what did we miss here?
I would say the thing that we kind of just quickly touched on, but I would like to reinforce, is a schedule of filter changes, which you kind of just talked about.
Right.
I've tried it both ways, and the one that we've settled on is, client, you own this equipment. I don't have ownership of it, and we are using it to keep your house comfortable while we're on site, but I can't take ownership of it. I don't know how well you've maintained it, and if it's going to kick during this project, that is not my responsibility. If I have done my job to protect it, here's what we know we have to do to protect your equipment. Filter changes, taping everything off, isolating the space, running the air scrubbers, all the things that we've talked about. But if you're talking about a replacement of equipment, especially under today's prices and the refrigerant changes and everything, that could be the difference between profitable and loss. So you're damn sure going to have an angry client. So that's a guarantee. You definitely want to have a filter change schedule. You want to have it be a reminder on your phone. You want to notify the client that you have done it. That was one that I also did not learn in an enjoyable fashion, because I said, no, we've been doing this. And he said, well, the guy said the coil was packed with dust. It's like, well, show me the coil. Yeah, that's 6 years of cat hair. I didn't bring any cats to this job. We've only been doing renovation work. none of it performed by cats. So I'm not able to justify the purchase of your equipment, but we will try to do our part to limit that cost. And that's the best you can do sometimes. But if you provide a schedule and you verify with your client, hey, here's the picture of the filter I changed today, just wanted to let you know I took care of that. I didn't want you to go in and change it because I know you were thinking about it too.
Yeah.
That kind of like, oh yeah, we're glad handing the hell out of this. But do that stuff because it will make a difference and make these really unpleasant, potentially unpleasant conditions a little bit better.
Right. And one thing we do just on the HVAC side is it's not uncommon for us to take a piece of equipment like this, take the ductwork, and we'll put it right in front of the return. So there's always this cushion of clean air that's surrounding it, and then we're not sort of taping and untaping filters on the return. We're just servicing this and renting this like a normal piece of equipment.
Smart.
And usually that 500 CFM is enough to sort of at least keep up with, but maybe not overwhelm the area.
That's smart. I haven't thought of that. It's very smart.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions? I get one every week, dude. I'm from Jersey.
I thought it was for me, Jordan. I shave every morning. Well, come on, man.
I know.
Good looking out, brother.
All right, beautiful.
Yes, sir. Okay. Oh. Can you repeat the question?
So the question was basically, you started with a larger model. The homeowner shrunk the scope. So what was previously maybe going to be refinished or demoed is now a salvaged floor, and how do you handle that? And I don't have an answer for that, except I'm a fixed cost contractor, so I have a contract that says this is the scope of work, so that kind of covers me, but I did have a situation where we were supposed to put carpet down, so the drywall guy dropped like mud all over the floor, and then they said, actually, we just want to leave the concrete, and we had to go there and clean everything. So I don't know, do you have a good solution for that? I mean, I would just hold them accountable and say, well, you're going to pay us to make these repairs because it's outside of our scope of work.
Yeah, I've got universal advice for that, but not specific advice for that. And the universal advice is that you have to be extremely rigid on the front end so that you can be flexible on the back end. So if your scope of work is clearly defined and they have changed the scope of work, when they do that, you have to be very rigid and say, okay, that's fine. Anything that we change beyond this is going to require us to look at things differently. And by changing the scope and adding this floor refinishing, what was going to be demoed, we have a cost to do that that's going to reflect the lack of care that we took for a floor that was going to be demoed as you originally had told us it would be. And I don't like to be a jerk. I always want my clients to think that we're friends because a lot of times we are, but we have to be rigid and protect ourselves as well as they are. Yes, sir. Oh, great question. This is a great question. For anyone that didn't hear, the question was, how do you handle job site security to protect those possessions that your clients do have in the house that you have access to? And that really speaks to your initial point, which is we try to isolate. We have separate entrances on anything that we possibly can, on anything that is, the bathroom reno that's at the end of the hall. What we try to do is always have one of our company representatives and not a subcontractor be the one to open or close the job. We always want to be the last face they see at the end of the day. That's how you're going to get your site sweep done and show your face to say, look, we're caring for your project. But in terms of like having garage codes or keys to the job, if it is a renovation that is in the client's finished space, we don't share that with trade partners unless we have permission. I have a great tile setter that we worked with for about 15 years who has keys to my house. And so I'll tell the client, hey, John and Brian are gonna wrap up and they're probably gonna be grouting till 5:30 or 6 if it's okay with you. They have keys to my house, so I feel like it's safe for them to have keys to your house. But if you're not comfortable with it, it's no problem for me. On new home construction, we have a lot of cameras and stuff like that. How do you handle it?
Yeah, we basically, I take more a cavalier approach, but I basically say like, listen, your house is not the nicest house we've worked in. It's not the nicest house my plumber's worked in. You're not the wealthiest client we've ever worked for. When you hired me, you decided to put your trust in me, and I'm deciding to put my trust in these people. My reputation is is more important than your belongings. Certainly anything that you cannot replace, a Picasso, get it out of there. But everything is trust. Our clients have to trust us. We have to trust that things are getting done correctly, and I put a ton of faith in my trade partners. So in general, we're letting them lock up, we're letting them show up for the most part, and there's a lot of contracts, but at the end of the day, it's just a handshake and like making connection. Like, I trust you, you got this. But also, like, it's not the nicest house we've worked in. The people who are most worried about it are typically not the people with the most means.
That's true. We self-perform a lot of our work, so it's a little easier for us to have people on site that are our folks.
That's true.
But both strategies work, and I think, Zach, you've really shared a lot with me today. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot from you, brother.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks a lot.